But let me tell you all this thing about the boy thing. No black man wants to be called boy, and no black young man wants to be called boy. If you saw the movie To Sir with Love, which was about some English children, and a black man, Sidney Poitier, was their teacher, there was a scene in the gym class. There was a heavy-set kid whom the gym instructor was going to make jump over one of those vaults. The leg broke, the child fell. And the teacher was not showing the proper consideration. And one of these thuggish white boys came over and said, "Don't say this to Potsy," or whatever his name was. So, and I said boy on purpose. The gym teacher looked at him and said, "Boy, get out of my face." And he said, "I am not a boy." And he was white. When that word is used as a term of derision, it's different. Harry Belafonte sang a song, and he was being chased by the sheriff and the hound dogs. But this is what he said: "I ain't a man to be played with. I ain't nobody's toy. I've been working for my pay for a long, long time. How come he still calls me boy? I whopped that man, darling Cora. He fell down where he stood. It may have been wrong, darling Cora, but Lord, it sure felt good." That's what being called boy can result in. People need some acculturation. Senator Carlson did not call me a boy. He said he doesn't mind being called one, but that shows the difference in our status in this society. Senator Christensen got one letter, read one letter, and that's supposed to convert everybody on this floor. Suppose he got one letter that told him, when you look at the cost of incarcerating somebody as opposed to the cost of educating, are you willing to give more money to the university and do some preventing instead of curing? I bet he won't support an increase in the appropriation for the university, but I'm going to watch and see. I'm still hearing from western Nebraska that good money ought to be sent after bad. And if you send it, I'm not going to have heartburn. I just use these opportunities to point out how people's so-called principles are very fluid and flexible, and today they don't look anything like what they supposedly were yesterday. And every time I get that opportunity, I'm going to point it out. It might teach some of my colleagues to stop being so hidebound, rigid, doctrinaire, and ideologish. You know what an ideologue is. And I don't know if there's a word ideologish, but if there wasn't, there is one now. I want people to be aware of the fact that I know what words I'm using. Senator Sinowicki is coming up with a proposal designed to address a genuine problem. But you know where the key is to all of this? The Board of Parole. What is the Board of Parole going to do in terms of making decisions? Will there be favoritism shown? Will everybody similarly situated have an equal opportunity to participate in this transitional activity? I certainly hope so.
1 minute.
But if this is done, there's going to have to be a great amount of scrutiny and oversight. And I may have to put an amendment or a motion or two on Senator Sinowicki's bill so that I can continue my discussion, but I'm not going to try to kill it or stop it, but I want some things clearly in the record, especially on the part of my colleagues who are willing to spend money to hire more employees than they have people that are being dealt with. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Wallman. Thank you, Mr. President.
You have about 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
Thank you, and I'll try to make the most of it. And I am preparing an amendment which is going to be a serious amendment. It won't hurt Senator Sinowicki's bill, but it will correct some bunglesome language. Maybe a tactic ought to develop here. If somebody can get enough votes for some lame-brain notion to establish some ineffective activity and get it funded, then when it fails, come back to the legislature and say, well, you know, now that we have that there, let's spend all the money it takes to make a go of it. It never should have been done, but we did it. So now it's going to be sending good money after bad, but let's go ahead and do it because we're so deep in now we can't get out. The legislature can do whatever it wants to do. However, what we ought to be looking at is why it costs so much to incarcerate somebody in the penitentiary. Why are those costs so high? Maybe there are people going to the penitentiary who ought not to be there. People of my complexion might make up about 3% of the population of the state or less. Not being an economist, I'm not that good on these numbers, but somebody will be. But more than a third of the occupants of the penitentiary
1 minute.
are people of my complexion. And you think I'm not troubled by that? But the only time we discuss seriously that situation involving crimes and punishment is when harsher penalties are to be adopted, more jobs are to be given to white people in rural areas where they don't want black people to live. You think black people would be welcome to come and live in Tecumseh where they put another prison? But those Tecumsehites like the prison, and they like to have plenty of us, meaning people of my complexion, because they make money off us. The prison is the factory, black people are the raw material, and the white people are the workers. That's what they see us as, that's what they like us for, and they don't respect us. And I'm not respected here, and I know that. You think I'm crazy? Well, I'm not. I know what my status is here, but I'm not going to walk around here like some of my...
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Chambers, you're recognized to open on Floor Amendment 30.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, this was bad legislation when it was presented and when it was enacted into law. But it is the law now. I will tell you what my amendment is for the record. On page 5, in line 17, and again in line 23, you will see this phraseology, unsatisfactorily discharged. Well, I don't think that it's the nature of the discharge that we're dealing with here, but we're dealing with the fact that the person being discharged performed unsatisfactorily. This is the bunglesome language I'm talking about. And this is the kind of bunglesome trash legislation that passes this legislature because people are not attentive. But so here's the way my amendment would read. In line 17 and in line 23, I would strike the word unsatisfactorily. Then after the word discharged, I would insert the words for unsatisfactory performance. Then it would say, if the offender is discharged for unsatisfactory performance from the incarceration work camp, and so on. That's the way the language should read, and I'm offering that amendment. And you may accept it, you may reject it, but I want it for the record. I spend a lot of time talking about education. I will emphasize how poor the educational opportunities are for black children, Latino children, Native American children, poor white children, but then also point out that the education being given to white children is not great shakes either. Whereas on certain tests, the children I'm concerned about on the CAT will test out in the 20-something percentile, and white children in the 70-something percentile. 70-something is not anything to be proud of. That's not anything to be proud of. But it's 50 percentage points above what my children are doing. To show you what I mean about white people not getting that good an education, I got a gray-covered folder with some information, and it says NSEA-retired. Nebraska State Education Association, retired. Then underneath that, enclosed in parentheses, the commitment continues. Inside is a sheet of paper with a list of bills that this group is talking about their position with reference to. I ended that with a preposition, huh? I want to find out who's paying attention. Some of the bills they support. Some they support with reservation. And some they're going to monitor. And guess how they spell monitor? These retired educators, M-O-N-I-T-E-R. I don't even know if when they were talking about the monitor in the Merrimack during the Civil War, they spelled monitor M-O-N-I-T-E-R. Maybe they did. There's a creature from mythology called the Minotaur, but it's not monitor. This from the teachers, M-O-N-I-T-E-R, and they're teaching my children. And the teacher can't spell. That's by way of example. My problem is that I read everything I can get my hands on, and I shouldn't. I was telling you all about the difference between respect and fear, and how people of my complexion are not respected. People want to make those two words, fear and respect, synonymous, but they're not. I've given this little example to some of my former colleagues, or for Senator Whiteman's benefit, some of my erstwhile colleagues. And to digress further, since he accepts that designation of erstwhile conservative, I've got to find a different designation which nettles him a bit. He's over here smiling like a Cheshire cat. And for those who don't know about the Cheshire cat, in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll, there was this cat. And he just kept, parts of him disappeared and disappeared until nothing was left but a wide, toothy grin. So when somebody says grinning like a Cheshire cat, you know what they mean. But Bismarck had his nephew sitting on his knee. Most people know Bismarck was a powerful fellow. So Bismarck asked his nephew, what do you want to be when you grow up? The nephew answered the question this way, not what he wanted to be, who he wanted to be like. He said, Uncle Bismarck, I want to be just like you. And Uncle Bismarck said, nephew, why do you want to be like Uncle Bismarck? Nephew looked up at him and he said, because people are afraid of you, Uncle Bismarck. So Uncle Bismarck looked at the child. He said, well, don't you want people to love you? And the nephew said, oh, no, Uncle Bismarck, I want them to be afraid of me. Uncle Bismarck said, why do you want them to be afraid of you rather than love you? The nephew said, when people love you, they take advantage of you. When they fear you, you take advantage of them. That's the way it goes. People show regard for certain of us who are at the margins only when they think that we're able to fight back and defend ourselves. When I was a small lad in grade school, they read the story, Little Black Sambo, and I was the only black child in the classroom, and the white kids were allowed to laugh, and the teacher didn't say anything about it. And at that time, I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't fight for myself, but I never forgot that. I can fight for myself now. I can defend myself now, and I can fight for others who are similarly situated to the way I was as that lone black child in that white classroom being mocked and laughed at based on a story being read by a white teacher. And my parents had taught me when you go to school, you respect the teacher. So naturally that created in my mind a quandary. But I was an obedient child outwardly, but my thoughts were mine. And I had thoughts toward that teacher, which my parents probably would not have approved of. But if they were totally honest, and I had explained what happened, they might have had thoughts of a harsher variety than mine, because mine were the thoughts of a child whose feelings had been hurt, and nobody was there to speak for me. And they were being hurt by the one my parents told me to respect. So all that talk of respect means nothing to me. There is no respect for a black person in this society, and I know it. There was no respect for me as a child. There's no respect for me as a man. But I'm a man now, and I can and I will fight, and I know how to fight. On this floor, my job is not to fight in a physical way. My job is to learn the rules. and do my fighting within the rules, even though my colleagues, ever since I've been here, made a regular routine of changing the rules to put me in a box, to shut me up, to control me, which they never could do. Back to this bad bill. I don't think it's a good idea, and I'll tell you why. Because the ones supporting this bill would not support looking at the problem being addressed in a system-wide manner. Suppose you put 40 or 50 people into this program Senator Sinowicki nobly is recommending. How many hundreds of inmates are there who should be in a similar program, but there is none? But now everybody's going to feel good because the matter has been taken care of. We have a transition program, but like so many things that happen to those who are locked up, it's not sufficient to provide what the legislature is saying ought to be available for anybody situated within a certain set of circumstances. I want us to look at the entire prison system, and if there should be a transitional program, incorporate it into the system. Don't do it in this little building just to help these senators from western Nebraska keep jobs for people in their neighborhood and get free workers who clean up the streets and cut the grass and pick up limbs and all these other things they talk about. If you really care, if this means something, why don't you talk about doing something with the system? And that's the difference between me and all the other senators who come down here. You skim along the surface like that water bug. You are so lightweight that you cannot even break the surface tension on that water. That's how you skate across. You have no substance, no weight. You have to break that film, go under the surface, and see what is there. And I try to bring it to you, but you don't pay attention, just like they didn't pay attention when they first passed this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Chambers.
Senator Chambers, would you yield?
Not to temptation, but to Senator Harms, yes.
You're wonderful today. Thank you. Senator Chambers, I just wanted to clarify something for you. First of all, I apologize for what you might have gone through as a child.
You didn't do it, so you don't owe me an apology.
No, but what I want to say to you is I apologize that occurred in our public schools. And I will tell you now that there is absolutely no reason, no excuse for that to ever happen again. And I respect you as a man, no matter what color your skin is. And I want you to understand that I think it's important that we never allow a child, regardless of what culture he comes from, to be discriminated, made fun of, because it is not and cannot be our future. And I want you to understand that's where I come from, that's what I believe in, and I am humbly sorry that occurred because there is absolutely no reason for it. Thank you.
Can I respond? Thank you, Senator Harms, for your kind words, but my skin thickened considerably a long time ago. What I discuss now is a memory. It is a vivid memory as though it happened yesterday. But I cannot be hurt inside by white people ever again, no matter what they do, no matter what they say. I don't look for anything other than mistreatment. So, I'm able to function in a hostile environment, but I'm glad to know that there are people with an attitude different from the one manifested toward me when I was a child, but that attitude still prevails in this society. They still make black children in the curriculum of the school read that Huckleberry Finn. I won't use the N-word, but there's a paragraph where they name this character the N-word. It might appear 9 times in one paragraph. And I don't know what white people are trying to teach to their white children or get across to black children when they say this is the greatest literature that there is and it's got to be in the curriculum. White people need this, and black children need to hear it so they know what they are. They know what their role is, and this is still taught in the schools now as a part of the curriculum. Let it be in the libraries. I think everything ought to be in the library. Everything. Trash literature, all of it. Let the children be exposed to whatever is out there. But there are some things even in a library, which are not age appropriate for children in the lower grades. So when I make these kind of statements, I'm expecting them to be viewed and understood by people who can think in, to use the word, nuanced ways. I'm talking about material which is age appropriate. Let the story of N. Jim be in the high school library. Then let a white kid come up to me and call me the N-word, and I can deal with him. And what I told my children, when you go to this, because they went to a school where there are a lot of white kids, Fontenelle was the name of it. If you get called one of those names, you hit him in his mouth. And you will teach him with your little knuckles what his parents didn't teach him, what the schools didn't teach him, what the church didn't teach him, but you might save his life. Because if you knuckle his nose or his mouth now, you will stop him from doing that to an adult who might take his life.
1 minute.
And we have foolish black people who use that N-word. But because they are fools doesn't mean that intelligent people should follow the example of a fool. So the next time I'm recognized, I'm going to tell you about an incident that took place in the schools, since I'm kind of on that, with my son when he was a little bitty boy. But he was obedient, and he followed his daddy's orders. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. We have Senator Chambers, followed by Senator Dubas, Senator Karpusek. Senator Chambers.
Thank you. Here's what happened. I had 2 sons and a daughter attending this school. And the principal had my son, my obedient son, standing with her in the hall. And she said to my daughter, whose name is Gayla, Gayla, I want you to talk to your brother. The principal's name was Miss Doan. Gayla said, Miss Doan, why do you want me to talk to him? She said, I just want you to talk to him. So Gayla said to my son, what happened? He said, one of those white boys called me that word. And Gayla got indignant. She said, you know what Daddy told you to do when one of those boys called you that? My son said, I did. And my daughter looked at the principal and said, you need to talk to my father then. And the principal never talked to me about that. So how do I know about it? Because my children told me. My children were not taught that you have to let people slap you on one cheek, then you let them slap you on the other one too. Because I didn't rear my children to be fools. And I didn't rear them to be cowards. Do I think I'm the toughest man in the world? Not by a long shot. I might be weaker than cream. I might not be able to lick my lips. But if somebody comes to do something harmful to me, they better be ready to stay there all day. Because either we're going to work this thing until they can go on no more, or until I can go on no more. And if I can go on no more today, I better not be well tomorrow, and you still be around. And that's the kind of life I have led. It's the kind of life that black people lead. But then I have to come to an assembly like this, and I have to learn your rules. I have to read your laws. I have to try to correct them as I'm attempting to do now. I have to learn your history and inform you of your history. I have to point out the deals, the boondoggles done by your white leaders, the governor. And who's going to tell you about it if I don't? Nobody. This shouldn't be my job. You know what I should be doing? I should be coming down here and gloating every time I hear of a program that hurts white people. When white women who are single parents, who have families, cannot take care of their little children, I should gloat. But I don't. When I found out through the black woman who works in my office that white female employees in the state of Nebraska paid the same amount into the pension program as any white male working the same job, got a lesser payout when she got her pension, I said, white people know that and it doesn't bother them? Obviously it didn't. So who brought a bill to correct it? I did. And corrected it. And you know what I had to argue to get these white men to go along with it? When this white woman goes to the store to buy a loaf of bread, they don't tell her because you get less in your pension that we're going to charge you less for a loaf of bread than we charge this white man. Not every white woman lives longer than every white man, which was the rationale. Since they live longer and you're going to have to pay them longer, give them less in each payment. That is insane. But that's the way white people do things, because they run everything. And they determine what's right and wrong. But I have a system within me of what I consider to be just. And I'm not going to be bound by what they say, what they do, what their laws say if I'm in a position to change it and bring about what I think ought to be just. But you all are not going to have me to worry about much longer. Then you can do anything you want to. You can fund these boondoggles and send good money after bad. You can have this bunglesome language in your laws that ought to embarrass you if you took reading when you were in school. But you don't have to read the bill.
1 minute.
You don't have to do any of the things I do, and you'll still get by. The man who wound up being Attorney General now got 6 bills passed when he's in the legislature. The 2 biggest bills that Senator Smith, who is now the representative from the 3rd Congressional District, the 2 biggest bills he got, one to let him shoot firecrackers for a longer time during the sesquicentennial, and also to let people sell food in an open-air market without getting a regular food vendor's license. Those are the 2 dynamite things he did, and now he's in Congress. I couldn't get a vote to be dog catcher in this state. Not that I'd run for it, because if I caught the dogs, I wouldn't be killing them. But anyway, thank you, Mr. President.
Chambers, would you yield?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. I just saw that you voted this bill out of committee, and I guess, could you explain that for me?
Yes, and I did when I first began to speak, that I wanted the bill on the floor for the very discussion we're having now, so that all aspects of it could be discussed, the origin of the bill, but also some broader philosophical issues relative to crime and punishment. So I voted to bring the bill out because I'm not against the bill itself as such.
So is the main part where this camp is? Or is that part of...
Initially, that's what it was. But now that the elephant is here, Senator Sinowicki wants to try to make the best use of it, and that's why I said I would not offer an amendment or anything at this point to try to shut it down. But I want to use it and the facts that are being presented to show that this approach is piecemeal and not sufficient. And the only reason I'm expressing my view that I think some of the people are supporting it from western Nebraska is because it's going to give some work and benefits to them. But if you get outside of where they live, they're not in favor of letting this be like a pilot project and we use it throughout the correction system. That would cost money, and then all of a sudden, thumbs down and they're not for it. So that's kind of what I was about and have been about.
I was getting it, Senator Chambers, but I guess I just want to, we have Senator Chambers. I just want to say I don't see this as a black and white issue. I hope that those sort of thinking is gone. I realize that he thinks it is still here, and it probably is, but I don't so much see it on this floor. And if I would see it, and I know most of my colleagues, if not all, if they saw it, they would stand up and say this isn't right. So I just want to put that out to say that is not what we're about. We're here to try to do the best we can for everyone in the state. Not only my district, not only the ones around me, but the whole state. And we're here to listen. If Senator Chambers has ideas that we can try to help his constituents, we better be doing that. So we're here to help. We're not always here just to argue with Senator Chambers, although that is kind of fun once in a while. But we're here to help. Ask us to help rather than always chastising us. Ask for a hand out. We can help.
31 ayes, 1 nay to cease debate, Mr. President.
Motion to cease debate does pass. Senator Chambers, you're recognized to close on Floor Amendment 30.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the legislature. To make clear what the amendment does, in lines 17 and 23, you will find the phrase unsatisfactorily discharged. My amendment would strike on each of those lines the word unsatisfactorily. Then, after the word discharged, would be inserted the words for unsatisfactory performance. So instead of saying the offender is unsatisfactorily discharged, it would say the offender is discharged for unsatisfactory performance. It is so reasonable that there's a good chance it will be rejected. I have a way of attaching nicknames to people. Sometimes I'll let the body know why, other times I won't, and sometimes the person doesn't even know why. I had referred to Senator Hudkins, it may have been last session or 2 sessions ago, as Wonder Woman. I'm looking at the memo she handed around today, and I want to amend that to Wonderful Woman. I'd be in my office, Senator Hudkins, and when I'd hear somebody say, I yield my time back to the chair, I would grind my teeth. I would clench my hands, and I'd say, why? Why? With all of the problems we have in the unicameral legislature, why do we have to have one like that? Read Senator Hudkins' memorandum, and you will see why I am so pleased this morning with what she has presented to us. This amendment is designed to get rid of what I've referred to as some bunglesome language in the existing law, and it is repeated in new language. I haven't had a chance to look at every bit of underlined language in Senator Sinowicki's bill to see if that term, unsatisfactorily discharged, is in here in other places. But sometimes I get so upset with how poorly bills are drafted. The difficulty of understanding precisely what language means in the statutes themselves, that I have jestingly said, when I'm out of this place, I will seek a job which would require me to start with page 1, volume 1 of the Nebraska statutes and read it page by page, word by word, and offer corrections and clarifications in these existing atrociously written statutes. And I was half jestingly offered the job, but I don't want it. When I leave this legislature, I will not look back toward Lincoln. I will shake the dust off my feet. I will never come this way again for anything. When they had these old-time, old-fashioned senators' days for people to come back who've got nothing to do with their time, and they come here, I won't be among them. And as I've stated, if I have occasion to fly west, and the airplane is going to fly over Lincoln for any reason other than to annihilate it, I will fly a different airline. Lincoln holds no sentimental attachment from my side. I don't know of many things that have happened here that would make me want to visit Lincoln again. When the weather is very inclement, some people say inclement, put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, or Senator Dubois, as they used to say, put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. I would get on that highway and try to make it home. Sometimes there'd be slush
1 minute
reaching midway my hubcap, and I'd make it. Threats of tornadoes, and I'd look off in the distance and see these lowering clouds. But I would rather risk facing the tornado than staying overnight in Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, if you want to adopt this amendment, the opportunity is here. If you choose not to, I won't be offended. Your attitude could be, it's served the state since 1997. If it was stupid then and it's stupid now, the stupidity was okay then, why wake a sleeping dog? I guess it's just in me. That's all I would have, Mr. President. I will take a machine vote.
Thank you.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
Floor Amendment 30 is adopted. Thank you, Senator Chambers. You're recognized to open on LB 470.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, there's a song, the lyric of which I will not sing, but it says, they called me a dreamer. Well, maybe I am. But I'm not such a dreamer that I think we can dispose of this bill in the 12 or 13 minutes we may have left. So rather than go into an involved explanation, which I would have to repeat tomorrow anyway to bring people up to date, I'm going to make some general comments, and I will repeat them tomorrow also. This bill is about fairness and justice on the part of the state toward toward innocent people. I worked with the city prosecutor of Omaha to contrive this bill. He has received many requests from people because there will be a notation of arrest behind this person's name, which is a matter of public record, even though the person is innocent. Perhaps no charge was ever filed. If the charge was filed, it was dismissed before trial because there was not enough evidence. A person would enter a diversion program, never be taken to trial, never would there be a finding of guilt. So in effect, the people affected by this bill are all innocent. But even though there are procedures which will allow a person convicted of a crime to have that record expunged, a person can get a pardon. As strange and ironic as it may seem, there is no way under the law of Nebraska for an innocent person to have a notation of arrest removed from his or her record. Because of that individual's innocence, he or she thinks that he or she has a clean record, which any ordinary person would believe. Years later, and this is how it usually comes to their attention, they will be applying for a job. Now that background checks are made for almost every job, it comes up, and they immediately are no longer considered for the job. Explanations mean nothing because the presumption of innocence applies only in the courtroom and not always there. In the minds of most people in this society, you would not have been arrested if you hadn't done something wrong. You would not have been charged if you were not guilty. But this is often what leads to the injustice that this bill is designed to correct. It would say that after a certain period of time, that notation no longer is a matter of public record. It would not be erased forever. The courts would still have access to it. Law enforcement would still have access. These two tracking methods are maintained independently of each other. Because of that, the prosecutor pointed out that there is no cost entailed in doing this. They simply drop this person's name from the system so that when a background check is made, that doesn't show up. Be thinking about the A bill. I'm not going to try to get a vote on anything this morning because I want this to be thoroughly explained on the record. However much time people want to discuss it will not offend me. Any questions that develop, I hope you will ask them so we can spread these questions on the record and I can give an answer so that we will have it clear from this day forward or the day when this bill becomes law. And I hope I can persuade you to support it. It will be obvious that the legislators knew what we were dealing with. We knew the nature of the action we will be taking, and we intended to take that action. Nothing in this bill applies to anybody who is guilty. It applies to nobody who has been convicted. It applies only to those people who, under the law, are innocent. But that notation will remain on their record forever. But if you committed a crime, there are ways for you to have your record expunged. There is more consideration under the law right now given to the guilty than to the innocent. Another thing I hope you'll look at is that A bill, which I think is exorbitant. The State Patrol is saying it would cost them $500,000 to do this, although they're doing it already. They're required under the present law to drop these people's name from this list, and to some extent they're doing it. I think it's an attempt to use this bill as a backdoor way to get $500,000 to do some updating of their computer infrastructure. If the city of Omaha, where a lot of arrests are made, where a lot of people will be affected by this, do it without additional cost, I don't think the State Patrol needs that money. But once an agency submits a fiscal note that has an amount of money in it, the introducer of the bill has to have an A bill drafted with that amount of money. So when we get to the A bill, we will discuss that. And I don't think that amount of money is needed. In fairness to the State Patrol, I was told by the individual who works with the legislature that that amount was given by a software company which would do this work. I said, well, they think the state has deep pockets, so they're going to charge you anything they think they can get. But I'm opposed to that $500,000. That is not needed. But again, I'm speaking in general terms today because I'm going to have to go through all of it again tomorrow. But if anybody has a question, which maybe we can get in and I can answer before we recess or adjourn, I'm prepared to do that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.